Welcome back to Party Girl Interrupted. This is the podcast where we explore identity, reinvention, ambition, and what it feels like when the life that you've built stops feeling like the one you're meant to live. I'm your host, Kathy Wong. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Amanda Baudier. She is a former party girl, now spiritual teacher, somatic and executive coach who helps entrepreneurs and founders and clients navigate burnout, regulate their nervous systems, and with the deeper transformations that come from building something meaningful. Amanda, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to Party Girl Interrupted.
Thank you so much. I love talking to people who have some understanding of what the first 14 years of my career looked like, because a lot of people have no idea. They just don't understand that world. And so it's nice to talk to somebody who gets it.
Yeah. And actually, shout out before we jump into it, shout out to Lana over at Conscious Here.
Yeah.
She had you on. She sees what I'm building over here. And she was like, you guys have to meet. And then, of course,
Yeah.
both form of New Yorkers. I knew you were still there. I'm in
hmm
LA, but New
Yeah.
Yorkers who were working and living in peak New York nightlife era. So, very excited to have this conversation.
Totally.
Is your journey is perfectly aligned with what this
hmm
podcast is about,
Yeah.
from
Absolutely.
party to purpose.
Uh,
And so I'm so excited because, you had it all. You had the career, you had the life, you were living in the greatest city in the world, at Tao Group, like the behemoth of nightlife
uh,
hospitality and everything that people were taught to chase, but your body was telling you something different. So we're going to
yeah.
talk about burnout. We're going to talk about identity. We're going to talk about healing. And
Mm,
then all those moments, I call them the interruptions that
yeah.
happen so that you can actually see where it points to you're meant to become. So party to purpose.
Absolutely.
Before we get into it all, love to have you introduce yourself in your own words.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Amanda Baudier. She said a little bit about what I do professionally. I really weave spiritual and somatic healing with hard nosed business expertise and coaching. All of my clients, for the most part, are founders, entrepreneurs, people whose personal development is really interwoven and inextricably linked to their business growth. So I never really do one or the other. I'm always bringing it together with my one on one clients. And then I also lead a spiritual community, and that really evolved from my work one on one with entrepreneurs. I was realizing that a lot of people were doing this deeper work, asking these bigger questions, but they were doing it alone or they were doing it just with me and they didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And a lot of the spiritual communities that are out there are very niche. They're very Burning Man, they're very plant medicine, they're very hippie, very crunchy. And so my spiritual community, which is called Becoming Collective, is really for people who are living kind of more business lives, entrepreneurs, business people, parents who aren't making spirituality their whole identity, but
Yeah.
are doing that deeper work and asking those big questions. And they want to do it and not feel so alone.
Yeah. And so then you're based out of New York still, right?
Yeah. So I live in the mountains. I live about 2 hours north of New York City. I was in the city for 21 years. I moved to New York when I was 18. I went to Columbia undergrad and just never looked back. Stayed every summer. I actually started interning at Tao Group when I was a sophomore in college. So I basically like moved to New York, discovered clubbing, latched on to Tao
Ah,
Group and just like rode that wave for a really long time. I actually moved upstate full time 3 years ago, but like a lot of people kind of came up here during the pandemic and was like, my god, nature. Oh my god, I love this. So now I literally live on 20 acres in the woods, backing up onto a state park. It could not be any more different than New York City, but I love it. I still love New York City, but I really love the rooted life that I get to live now.
let's backtrack. Let's talk about the
Yeah,
party years for a little bit. What did
yeah,
life look
totally.
like in your party girl era?
My goodness. Well, I came to Columbia from a small town in Maryland. I was a public school kid. I had never gone to a party. I'd never gone to like a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
Like nobody did that. It was just a regular suburban town where you had like a backyard party or like Chuck E. Cheese. So when I got to New York and was taken to a nightclub for the first time, I still remember being at a club called Table 50 that was on Canal Street where Mark Ronson and Q-Tip were DJing. It's like a Tuesday night. And it was the first night that Jay-Z and Beyonce were like spotted out together as a couple. I'm drunk out of my mind off of free Belvedere vodka. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like it felt like the most magical, transformative thing, like such a departure from my sort of like boring
Yeah.
life that I had been living. And I was really like hooked in more ways than one from that day forward. I thought I wanted to work in journalism as a young, woman in New York City. I did a bunch of internships at Cosmo and Glamour and, all the magazines, realized there was no money in that.
Mm.
And I needed to make money. I don't come from money. And so I realized, okay, nightlife, hospitality, like there's money to be made in this. And so when I was like 19 years old, I sent a cold email to what was then Strategic Group, which, evolved into all of Noah and Jason's nightlife venues and Tao Group, and asked if I could be their intern. And as an Ivy League kid, when you ask someone for a free internship, they're like, oh my God, of course. It's like, it was a very easy, like, sure, no problem, you're hired. And that really started a 14-year career. I was there through so many openings before they had Vegas, before all the growth, before it became a group. I was dipping my toe in both ends, right? I was partying, I was going out, I was enjoying the nightlife, but it was also my career and my life. So I would spend, some days I would be in the club for 20 hours. I ate, slept, and breathed the
Yeah.
nightlife industry for a long, long time.
I think you'll resonate with because I was at a cell. So I was over at what
Yeah.
became,
Yeah.
EMM Group became Catch Group, and I would be like, "This is my playground." And then as, the years you kinda, like, weather worn and battle worn a little bit became your battleground.
For me, because I was doing sales and marketing, I had to be in the office most days at 9 o'clock. I would have walkthroughs all day long. So there was a certain point, I'm sure we'll get to the major burnout, but where I just physically couldn't withstand the lifestyle and then be back in the office at 9 a.m. with my heels on. That was the era. It was not a casual era. I was wearing, 4-inch heels, stomping around, meeting with fashion people, meeting with finance people. And so I always had to be on. Like I was on all the time
Were you in your, Forever 21 dresses, like, ridiculous
to
about
admit.
it? Like, that's the thing too, the millennial
Yeah.
fashion for that was so, like, "Let's go from office to club in our, like, peplum
Yeah,
blouses."
totally.
Why?
I was a huge sample sale girl. Like I
Yeah,
spent money I did not have
yeah.
at there was like a sample sale place not that far from our office. And
Mhm.
I was there like every single time. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, somebody really should have reined me in. I was out of control. Out of control. But I was cute. So
Yeah, I lived up by Columbus Circle, and there was a BB in there. Do you remember?
of
There was a
of
BB in there.
course.
I figured out by the way, genius, I figured out how to expense that stuff.
Of course. 100%. It was business expense.
We're like babies though. I was like 22,
Yeah.
23. I was anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
so but the passion for that era is so, so funny, but
Yeah.
anyone who was meeting you back then, that version of yourself, brand new, what were the assumptions that they were making of you? "Oh, she has it all."
Yeah, it was really interesting because when I first started like interning an entry level job in nightlife, a lot of my friends would say like you went to Ivy League, like why do you want to work in nightlife, right? Because they were all going to Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and all these jobs. I quite frankly like didn't even know what finance was. Like, it was I didn't grow up around people who understood rich people culture. I was just like, well, this is a good salary, and I like this. This is fun. But as Marquee and Tao and all of that started to take off, then all of a sudden it was like, oh, everybody was so glad that they were my friend, right? And so even though I didn't necessarily have the pedigree, the last name, I didn't have the money to buy the bottle service table. I was the one that could get everyone into all the clubs. I was the one having the insane birthday parties every year. DJ AM was on the invite for my college graduation party, which took place at Marquee, So I got a lot of validation. I got a lot of validation. I was always very proud to tell people what
Yeah,
I did and who I worked for and what I got to do. And, on the more partying side, I was somebody who always, for the most part, like kept it together. I was never like the messy one, the sloppy one, the slutty one. That was standing. I was drinking a lot. I mean, in my early days when I was less senior in my work and able to just like get after it, I mean, the drinking, the
yeah,
drugs,
yeah.
like it was normalized, right? I wasn't the only one doing it, but it was, I mean, I wouldn't even count how many drinks I would have in a night. That was normal then. I don't think that's normal with young women today the way it was but like, honestly lucky that I survived.
Again, we're unique and, like, yeah, we got to party in it, we were living in it. It was our bread and
Yeah,
butter, it was our career, it was what we knew. It built our identity from those young
100%.
20 something years. So, I call it short-term validation, and so
Mm,
it's the drinking, a lot of drinking, the drugs,
yeah.
and eventually that does lead to a burnout. Did you recognize that at all in your 20s so early on that you were like, "This isn't maybe something I can or want to do for the rest of my life?"
Well, it's really interesting because one of the beautiful things about the early stage of my career is that I was actually treated really well. I know a lot of women who work in male-driven industries feel like there's a lot of misogyny, feel like there's a lot of sexism. Shout out to my Tao group homies because I did not experience that at all. I always felt really respected. I always felt like my intelligence was validated. When I asked for things, it was honored. Like it was a very good professional experience. However, because my own self-worth was so low and my self-worth really came from what can I achieve? What can I do for other people? How can I continue to get more of this praise? And not for nothing, I worked in sales, right? I'm making more money. The more I work, the more I hustle. And so it was a perfect storm for type A perfectionist people pleaser with
Right?
low self worth
Right.
to literally become a machine. And I was called a machine. But I took that as a compliment. And, in that era, people were not talking about burnout. People were not talking about, self-care. It wasn't a thing that it wasn't even a term that I had heard. And so I was very tightly wrapped in that era. I was working out a lot. I was like eating very clean. I was a machine in more ways than one. So the thought that like something could be off with my health it didn't even cross my mind. I was young, I was exercising, I was, eating clean. By like 24, 25, I was not drinking to the degree that I was like in my, college years and early 20s. And so there were a lot of signs that things were wrong with my health, that like I was like overburdening my system, but I just overrode them. That didn't matter to me. As long as I could get up and physically perform at work, then I was fine. But then as the years went on, and actually we opened the Dream Downtown in 2011. And that was a huge breakthrough moment for me professionally because it was one of the first times where I had so much exposure to people from another company, right? Because I worked in house. But
Mhm.
then when we partnered with the hotel group, I got to interact with all of those executives. And then they were so impressed with me, right? Because I'm not just like street smart, nightlife girl. I'm book smart, Columbia Ivy League girl. And so, oh my gosh, the praise, being invited to important meetings. I was just like on cloud nine in terms of like the validation. I mean, the validation high was like peak. Well, the opening night of Dream, I'm wearing a strapless gold sequin gown. I've got my walkie, my earpiece. I'm walking arm in arm with Anna Wintour, bringing her into the club, like bringing all the celebrities and the athletes and bringing everyone to the club. And then I go back and I'm doubled over in pain, wincing because my digestive system had completely shut down. My digestive system was in a state of distress for probably an entire year surrounding the opening of that venue to the point where I lost so much weight. And once again never received more compliments. My
Right.
stomach was literally like eating
Yeah.
itself, but I
Yeah.
was skinny and I was looking, tiny in my clothes. And I mean, I was like, I went to the hospital a couple times, had to get, like, when celebrities have to get IV
Right,
hydration
yeah,
because of
yeah.
exhaustion. That was me. Like, I would push it, push it, push it, push it, and then have to go get an IV. Okay. Ignore, ignore, ignore. Fast forward. It's the end of 2012 and I go to a routine gyno appointment. He is like checking my vitals and just looks at me and goes, Amanda, your pulse is erratic. You need to go to the cardiologist right now. And I'm like, What are you talking about?" Like, I squeezed in this appointment between meetings. I was like, you're crazy. I'm fine. I probably had too much caffeine. And she's like, no, no, no. You need to go to the hospital right now. I am 20. Was I still 27? I was either 20 or 7 or 28 at the time. I had just gone to Noah and Jason and requested to invest basically my life savings so that I could become a partner. We were in the process of reopening Marquee. I was engaged to be married. And I was like, I don't have time. I don't have time for this health stuff. What is she talking about? Well, long story short, test after test after test. they're like, "Your heart is skipping every 3rd beat, and you need to get heart surgery, like, ASAP." Because I was truly an insane person at that time and really didn't have anyone steering me, in a better direction, I scheduled the surgery for Memorial Day weekend, which was, like, months after they told me this, because we were opening Marquee the week before, and I was like, "I'm not getting this done before the opening, I'm gonna open the club, and then
Mm.
I'll go get this little heart surgery thing." So my burnout was, I talk now about how burnout can manifest in so many different ways. And for a lot of people, it's emotional first. They kind of become an emotional wreck. They're snapping at people, they're crying. That was not me. I was in full functional freeze mode. I was like a robot. Like I was locked in, totally locked in. It was my body that crumbled. And so it took longer for me to realize how severe the burnout became because my mind, my emotions were so unwilling to look left or right. I was just in tunnel vision. Am succeeding.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is what
Yeah.
I do. If I don't have this, I'm nothing. I'm nobody.
Yeah.
How could I possibly put my foot on the brake?
Right.
No, I mean, it took heart surgery to even pump the brake a little bit. So, yeah, I got heart surgery at the age of 28, and that was really the catalyst that changed everything for me and really, put me on the path that I'm on today.
So that being an interruption, like a moment, a aha moment for you, did you leave nightlife then?
Okay, so the story gets fun. In that moment, I decided to take a year sabbatical. In my heart of hearts, I thought I was never gonna come back, and I don't know if this was before the movie Eat, Pray, Love, but I'd certainly never seen it, but I went to Bali, I went to India, I did my IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition health coach certification, I became a Reiki master, I did all types of certifications, we'd be here all day if I listed them all, and then we actually moved down to New Orleans because my husband is from there and he had a consulting project, and so we moved from the Big Apple to the Big Easy, and I was teaching yoga and meditation full time. I was living the like soft girl life. And I wasn't ready I hadn't healed enough to be that person, which is basically what I do today at a more, advanced level. But by the time I reached like 10-month mark where I'm like, oh, are we going to sign a lease for another year? I'm looking at the bank account and thinking, I can't survive as a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
I'm making $60 an hour. Like, I can't live like this going from working for Tao to, riding my bicycle to teach
Mm.
yoga classes. It was like, who am I? What am I doing? This is stupid. They were about to open another hotel and they're like, Amanda, come back. You can set boundaries. You don't have to work at nights. You can have
Mm.
it. And so I did go back and worked for another 3 years. And honestly, thank God I did because I was there through the MSG acquisition, and that was, like, a really fruitful process for me, not just as an employee and an equity holder, but also because I coach so many founders now through fundraising
Mhm.
and the acquisition process, and so, you know, there's a version of that story where it's like I gave up too soon. I think about, gosh, if I had started my healing business in 2014 and never stopped and just had faith and trusted, like, the money will come, right? The money will come. You'll get there. Like where I could be today instead of taking, another decade basically to figure it out. But everything happens for a reason. And, I did go back. That money, that'll call you right back.
I've just had this conversation recently too with like a fellow person from that era. It's like it took multiple times to quit. It just because you had an aha moment, even when your health and your body was yelling at you. I mean, my first interruption was my bipolar diagnosis, and that was in New York, right?
Mhm.
That happened.
Yeah.
Met a doctor at Catch who was one of the top brain doctors. Go to the doctor, get diagnosed. If anything, a couple months later, I moved to Vegas to work at Dre's. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
interrupted. Okay, well, let's see how bad this can get before you have your full
Oh,
on
right.
interruption. And it was hard. I left to work at a tech
Totally.
startup. I came back. But very, very similarly, you were at Tao with obviously the best of them with Noah Jason, but also with like Schwartz and Andrew. And you had such good men that it
Great
makes it harder to
people.
leave. I worked for Mark and Eugene. Like I had an amazing GMs, it's like it makes it harder to leave because you are actually
Yeah.
thriving, you're
Yeah.
making money and probably more respected than the other women in the club.
I hate to say it, but we're honest here, but there was a very big difference between how women who worked on the floor were treated versus women who worked in the office. I was always very like respected. In some ways, I was treated like one of the guys, but in other ways, I was treated like a little sister. And it's funny because I'm like an elder now. Like everyone that I coach, and I mean, not everybody, but I'm like in my elder era. But then I was the young one. I was a baby, and so I was respected, but I was also protected, and I never experienced some of the really kind of seedy things that happen.
Right.
I saw it happening.
Yeah.
I was aware of it happening, but it never came anywhere near me. I don't think I was young enough to have a philosophy about that at the
Right.
time. I was so wet behind the ears. I moved to New York thinking I knew everything. I knew nothing. I knew
Mm.
nothing about society. I knew nothing about wealth and class. I knew nothing about power. I just knew nothing about the world. So who did I learn?
Yeah. I wrote about this in my book. It's such a bizarre economy of like money and beauty and power and like there is like, we talk about women on the floor, off the floor, the competition. I was also the youngest. I was 23 when I started working in the club. And then I was doing those promoter meetings in the daytime too. So like same
Yeah.
like leaving the club at 5, showing up at 9, 9:30. Like one thing that and I don't know, maybe you didn't experience this, I experienced being that young was I didn't feel that I had a woman, like, support from women. The women that were in my circle in terms of in the club were the waitresses who could be very territorial, like,
Yeah,
my client,
totally.
we didn't have many women managers, and if they came, they always were in and out, they didn't stay very long, and so something that at this age now, my late 30s, I'm also the older sister of my family, I've always tried to be that for younger women. I don't feel competitive with younger women, I don't try to, like, little or but it's so interesting that, like, yeah, did you experience that as well? It was hard to have female friends.
I mean, there were very few female peers
Right.
to even gauge yourself against, right? They
Mhm.
just weren't there. I felt like there was a very big divide between the bartenders, the waitresses, and me and what I did. And it was never, we were cordial. I actually, I still have a handful of friends who are waitresses and bartenders back in the day, but it wasn't like there was no mentorship. And what's really interesting is when I came back after my sabbatical, very shortly thereafter, I got pregnant. And I was the first person at the company to have a
Mhm.
baby. Well, the first woman to have a baby. Anyone else who worked there, right, had a wifey
Right,
who,
right.
they take the baby and, the guy is working and traveling and on the BlackBerry and whatever. So that was a really interesting thing to navigate, and I will say, becoming a mom in the hospitality industry, I definitely felt like, "Okay, I'm washed up now." Like, I'm not gonna get the same opportunities that I did, I'm not gonna be viewed in the same way. Not for I don't know, but I feel like even if I hadn't had a kid, that there is almost like an expiration date for women in
Yeah,
that world that is not true for men. We're all gray hair, pot
sure.
belly in the club, right? There was an expiration date. I probably stayed a little past what should have been my eventual expiration date,
Mhm.
but I'm glad that I made it out. So all's well that ends well.
It is a testament to leave nightlife, especially with the long run in it, with your
Mhm.
reputation intact, with, like, no hard feelings, like, good relationships, like, all those things, and so kudos to you, kudos to us.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I think, wow, if I just stayed, how much money would I have? What would I be? You know what I mean?
I'm sure
Yeah.
I see people our age and older that are still in it, and I'm like, "Aren't you
Yeah,
tired?"
yeah. It's not sustainable. And also, I think, you talk about party to purpose, right? My soul knew that I was meant to be doing something different with
Mhm.
all of my energy, all of my passion. I wasn't meant to be getting people drunk. I wasn't meant to be stroking the egos of rich men by putting them in the same room with models and celebrities, right? I just wasn't meant to be like proliferating the world of ego because that's what the world is. That's not the people who work there, right? But that's what we're creating. We're creating this beautiful fantasy land that allows people to feel important for a beautiful moment in time. And then they leave and then they're like, oh, I need more of that. I need more of that, right? It is addictive. Carl Jung says that addicts, people that crave substances are really seeking transcendence. Like
Mhm.
drinking spirits is like seeking spirit, right? You want to feel connected to something bigger than you. You want that transcendent experience. And so you seek it through and when I think about, like, being in the center of a nightclub when Avicii was playing Levels for the first time, I think it was the first time in New York. I was at Kane in the sunken dance floor at
Yeah.
Kane. and Avicii's DJing, and I still remember Levels coming on and being like, "How is this real life?
Yeah.
How is this real life?" Right? And those are the moments where you're like, "Maybe this is worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe this is actually good." But those moments are like
Sure.
1% of
Yeah.
the rest of it, and, it's not worth it. It's not.
It's not. What you're talking about is the paradox of something that I've realized when I worked with my editor when I was writing my memoir was that my life and every human being, every person is on the planet Earth that's trying to have a human experience is looking to connect. The
Yeah.
paradox of being in a space like in nightlife where there's the validation, there's addiction, there's burnout, there's all of those things that you're so desperately trying to connect. The paradox is that you're getting more and more disconnected. We're like cutting
Yeah.
together to do substances. You think that you're okay in this moment, we're connected. Da, da, da. Once the substance is gone out of your body, you're even more disconnected, you're even more alone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I think that there's 2 things to say about that. And the first, just touching on what you said about the desire for connection. I think that society has not taught us how to connect with each other vulnerably in healthy ways. It hasn't taught us how to be ecstatic with one another, how to be joyful with one another, how to be free and wild with one another,
yeah,
unless there is alcohol or drugs or a DJ or whatever involved, right? And so one of my friends said something hilarious, which was that, like, old white men going to Fish concerts is like they're seeking to have like somatic healing in a socially acceptable way. So, like, what we want to do is hold each other and cry with each other and scream with each other and sing with each other and engage in this sort of ritualistic connection that ancestrally everyone was doing across every culture since the beginning of time. But that's not socially acceptable. There are starting to be more communities that encourage people to be more free and wild and connected, whether it's through conversation, through song, through dance, through art, through, collaboration. But I know that I was very socially anxious and socially insecure. And so for me to enter a room full of strangers sober was so confronting and so overwhelming. And that social anxiety went away the second alcohol touched my lips. And then it's like, I feel safe here. But without going through the discomfort of I'm uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable, I need to learn how to be comfortable with people. I
mhm,
need to learn what kind of people I feel best around, who to be friends with, right? You don't learn a lot of those developmental lessons because kids in America, right? We start drinking at 14, 15, 16,
yeah,
and we miss out. Right? We miss out on all that social development that, like, allows you to be like, "Oh, this is awkward." It's like public speaking, right?
yeah,
You hate it, you hate it, you hate it. It's okay, it's okay. "Oh, this is easy," right? You have to go through the
yeah,
motions of it being really hard before it gets easy. And, liquid courage, if we only rely on liquid courage, we never develop real courage. And so that is like the connection piece. And then when it comes to soul loss, when we don't have a deep, unwavering anchor of who we are, our values, our worth, our potential, what makes us unique, and just really owning who we are, we will look to society, to our parents, to the media, to the nightlife scene to fill those gaps and fill those holes inside of us. But it's like putting it together with like really shaky glue. It's like, it's like
yeah,
kids glue, trying to glue together an identity, a little bit of sequins here, a little bit of gray goose here, right? And it's a shaky, it's a shaky creation. It's not real. It's not whole. And so what often happens when we start to do the deeper work, when we start to heal, even when we just develop kind of emotional maturity, we start to realize, oh, like that's not me and that was never me.
yeah,
They're not my friends and they were never my friends. I realized, oh, I'm kind of introverted. Like I'm outgoing, but
mhm,
I recharge by doing things solo and by being alone and having that private time. I didn't have alone time for nearly 20 years, living in New York City, living with roommates, partying all the time, working in an office. And so it's really easy to stop searching for your true self when you have all of these very socially acceptable aspects of your false self. Many people go through their entire life as the persona of who the world wants them to be. And I was very much on that path. And I think many people have decently happy lives
mhm,
without ever becoming their whole embodied true self. But when you look at, like And this is like mental health and addiction issues aside, but when you look at celebrities like Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson or Britney Spears who have these big identity fractures, well, that's because they're like the most extreme example of this like I'm who I need to be. I'm who everyone wants me to be. I'm who the whole world has decided I am. I don't know who I am. I'm
100%.
nobody without that mirror reflecting back.
Yeah.
And so the soul kind of starts to leak, right? When your entire identity is based upon this external projection. And you know this from the nightlife world, but there is such FOMO. They rove in packs, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
all going to San Tropez this week, and then we're all going to Croatia for Yacht Week this week, and we're all in Aspen this week, and we're all in the Hamptons this week. And I always thought that was so strange. I'm like, you guys are grown-ups. You're millionaires, you're billionaires. Live your life, be
Yeah.
yourself. But it is so like you have to be at this party, and then you have to be at All-Star Week when the NBA All-Star game is playing. You have to go to Cannes. Can't miss that. And then you have to be in LA during awards season. And it's like they all rove in these packs. And it's like to me, I mean, I'm such a rebel and I'm so even when I was part of that world, I was always looking at it skeptically and thinking like, let me tell you, if I ever make that much money, I'm going to be off doing my own thing. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
like, well, I have to go to Aspen this week because everybody else is in Aspen. That's
Yeah.
so
I
weird. It's
I had this you'll probably relate to probably had a bunch of these then. Like, I remember being in the limo to EDC one year, right? Like, getting there and then, like, it being in the freaking marquee the VIP deck and turning and being like, "I just saw you last night at XS. I just saw you last night at Marquee." Like, why did I sit in a limo for hours to sit next to the same person? Coachella memory is like an early Coachella memory was the same VIP. We're in the Rose Garden and we were waiting for somebody and it was a click. It's like the click couldn't leave without ever, where's Ryan? We have to wait for Ryan. And I just remember being like, this sucks. Like,
It's you know what's really strange? I went out not that long ago for one of my girlfriend's 40th birthdays. I won't name the venue, I won't name the DJ, but she was like, "I really wanna go out dancing," and I was like, "Well, let's see if we can make it," you know? But we did, and she's like, "Oh, I bet you're gonna know people." I'm like, "I'm not gonna know anybody." Let me tell you, I knew the doorman, I knew the security guards, I knew the DJ, I knew a couple of the freaking promoters, they're still promoting. I knew the floor manager, I knew half of the bottle customers. I haven't been in the industry since 2017. So we're talking 9 years and a pandemic later, and it's the same people in the club. And guess what? The same music. I'm like, has there not been any new songs since I was going to the club? Like it is a broken record. And like I'm on a path of evolution. I'm not trying to play the same 6 songs for the next like life's too short for that, but that's what's happening in the scene. It's good for a period, but you wanna get interrupted. Hopefully not by, diagnoses and heart surgery, but it yeah, it has an expiration date.
was there a period where you genuinely didn't know what your purpose was? Maybe that messy in between of, Tao and then being a yoga meditation.
Yeah. Well, there was a long period of time where I knew what my purpose was. I would say I probably knew what my purpose was my whole life, but I didn't think I was worthy or capable of it. I didn't think it was a possibility for me. Like I said, my self-worth journey has been a long and winding one. Still, I don't know that we ever kind of finish the process of, fully loving and claiming who we are. But I've always, up until very recently, put myself behind the scenes of people who I thought were more beautiful, more connected, more magnetic, more charismatic. So, I went from working in nightlife to working for two different companies in the wellness space that were headed by really shockingly, stunningly beautiful women, women who if you were to describe them, their looks would be one of the first things, not that it's the only thing, but I strategically positioned myself as executives in companies that had a really sort of charismatic, gorgeous front woman. I always knew that I wanted to help humans be more happy. So if I go back to like childhood,
Mm,
but then even in my years when I was like, should I stay in nightlife? Should I leave? Like, what do I want to do? I remember being like 24, 25, and thinking, I want to go back to school and go to UPenn and get a master's in applied positive psychology. Okay. That was a
oh,
brand new degree that came out. And I remember looking at it and thinking, well, I don't want to go into 200K of student loan debt. That feels like a bad idea. But I also just really never believed that I would be able to, like, create my own thing and make it, make it, uh, on my own, really, as the face, as the brand, as the reason why people show up, and it's, like, vulnerable for me to say that, but hey, I'm here on a podcast as me, right? And so, like, I think there's a lot of people that feel more comfortable behind the scenes, feel more comfortable behind the curtain or as a number 2, and it's terrifying to put yourself out there. People talk a lot about the fear of being seen. I think also there's a big fear of failure. Like, if I make this my thing, if it's my purpose, if it's my brand, if it's my name and it doesn't work, do I have the self-esteem? Do I have the resilience to pick
Mm,
myself and recover from that? It's like, if it's somebody else's company and something goes wrong, roll with the punches, roll with the punches. When it's you and it's you are the business, everything feels like a reflection of your worth, your value. It's not, did this offering land or did this product work? It's like, do people like me? Do I matter? And I'm sure, I don't want to say I'm sure, but I think coach founders, there's a reason why I only work with founders and I don't work with corporate executives, because the spiritual and the somatic piece is so essential for people who are being that brave with their life choice. The
yeah,
choice to be a founder and to create something and say, this doesn't exist. I believe it should exist. And I
yeah,
believe that I have the talent, the skills, the perseverance to make it a thing, right?
right, right.
It is like going in front of the firing squad. And, with the way social media is these days, I mean, it's even worse. It truly is. It's a real risk. It is a hero's journey from my perspective. And so it gives me a lot of joy to help people tap into the part of them that says, I am worthy. I deserve to give my dreams a shot. If things don't work out, I still matter.
Yeah,
I still am worthy. I'm still deserving of love and care, but I'm also not going to let fear hold me back from following the little dream that was planted inside of me. And so, yeah, I will say, like, I really do think I always knew what my purpose was, but it took me until I was in my mid 30s to say, hey, guess what, Amanda? You don't always have to help other people build their dreams. You can build your own dreams too. And hey, little Amanda, if things don't work out, I still love you. It's okay. So, but even party planning, I was making people joyful. I've
yeah,
always wanted to make people. I grew up in a very depressed household. Like, everyone in my family has different clinical diagnoses, but like a very depressive, very sort of traumatized family with a lot of mental health challenges. And I was always the one that was like, guys, cheer up, cheer up, cheer up. And so that longing, that deep soul longing for people to just, like, love life, that's
yeah,
what drives me every single day. And
yeah,
even when I was in a less aligned career, I think the reason I was able to do it so long is because nothing makes me happier than seeing people lit up with joy.
yeah.
And even though it's in a distorted way, right? A party still brings joy. It absolutely still brings joy. So that's always been my purpose.
As somebody who was pulled into a higher purpose, more aligned for yourself and what you're meant to be doing, how do you know when something is calling you or you're just trying to escape your current life?
I mean, this is where somatic practice
Mm,
and really learning to understand the language of your body, your nervous system, your spirit, your guides, if you want to go there, is so essential, because the answer is going to be slightly different for everybody, right? But what I generally recommend is, if something is soul aligned and it's really meant for you, it's not in a rush in the way that, like, a marketing calendar or a deadline or, a quarterly goal puts a timestamp on you. If something is really aligned for you and you are earnestly contemplating it, it is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And there will be a moment where it's a clear yes. The
yeah,
problem is that it is extremely challenging to be patient enough to wait for the clear yes. And most of us who are seekers, we're always in a moment of waiting for the yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because we want to evolve. We want to experience life fully. We want to fully embrace our purpose. And so, what I will often say to my clients and my community is to leave things on the altar, both literally and figuratively. If you have something that you're contemplating, hey, is this meant for me? Is this really what I'm meant to do at a soul level? And you leave it on the altar and you pray. Pray for the clarity and you pray for the answer to come in dreams or signs or synchronicities.
Mm,
And trust that if it is something that is soul aligned, there will be a moment where it reaches that boiling point. And this is the type of advice that if someone had said that to me in 2015, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here. Like, this is BS. I would have thought, yeah, that's true for you, but it's not true for me.
mm.
I wouldn't have believed that it was true for me. You have to really earnestly test it, see that it works for you, and then you'll believe it forever. Because now, as excruciating as it is sometimes to wait for the full body yes, I've had it happen to me enough times when I've quit jobs, when I've moved, when I adopted my dog. There's certain moments in my life where that full body yes was so overwhelming. Sometimes it comes immediately.
Mhm.
But like when I quit my last job, for example, before I launched my coaching practice, it was sort of like a bubbling question and a bubbling question. And there was some frustration and there was some contemplation. And then one night I was washing my face in the mirror and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to quit. And it was just like, there was no anxiety. There was no more rumination. It was just like a clear yes. And I went to sleep. And that's how I knew. And so, when you want to escape, that is gonna have so much urgency and so much like kind of almost like sharp energy around it, and it's gonna constantly be nagging at you the way a fear is nagging at you. That's not an intuitive hit. An intuitive hit is like a balloon blowing up inside of you. It's just like this clear opening versus like dee, 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 that little nagging overthinking thoughts that come in.
So the way you even just answered that and described it is such a beautiful way of blending business and spirituality. When you
Yeah.
started coaching, when you got this is genuinely curious for me because I had
Yeah.
the same kind of maybe imposter syndrome around it, but were you ever worried that people weren't going to take you seriously?
So, when I first started coaching, it was a little bit more focused on burnout and nervous system education because I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is very vetted clinical 3-year certification that I got trained in, and is not inherently spiritual. It's scientific and clinical and trauma informed. But as I got deeper into my work with clients and as my spiritual journey got more and more central to my life, as I started training in shamanism, it became so central to my work that most of my clients come through referrals. And everyone that was coming to me really wanted that side to be blended in. Now, don't get me wrong. They wanted me because I have real startup experience and real business experience. They weren't looking for just a spiritual coach, but they wanted someone who could really kind of sit in both worlds. And what's interesting is like 2.5 years ago, I led a retreat that was for founders. And it was the most outwardly, publicly woo woo I had ever been, where I was doing hands-on Reiki on people. I was chanting. I mean, we did lots of founder mastermind type things, but I was fully in my like spiritual teacher. And I left that retreat and I went home and I thought, I need to just put this out there more. I need to be more public about it. I need to change my website. I need to just like own
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I went through such an excruciating dark night of the soul where I was in bed. I got a stomach ailment. I was writhing and crying and I got a fever. I mean, my protector parts were holding on so tightly to you're a businesswoman. You've got a 20-year career. Don't put on the wide brim hat. Don't let them put you in that box. Don't lose the credibility you've built. And it was excruciating because there are a lot of phony baloney people who call themselves business coaches, but haven't even worked in business, or
Right.
call themselves spiritual coaches, but haven't even really been initiated into spiritual lineages. And, like I had a real career, I had a real career. And so it was really painful to step into. And, a lot of us have a witch wound, right? Where women in our ancestry were burned at the stake or shunned for being medicine women, for being too powerful. It was really, really hard. And I had to tell myself there's a quote that's I'm not who you think I am. I'm who God knows I am. And I had to really live into that and be like, Amanda, you have done all of the work. I've been a spiritual student since 2011. That was when I did my first yoga teacher training. I have done thousands of hours of reverent, steady apprenticeship, mentorship in spiritual disciplines. I've been running businesses, real businesses, multi hundred plus $1 million businesses for 20 years. I'm allowed to claim this. I don't
Yeah.
have to hide behind something that's more palatable. But I would be lying if I told you that that was just like easy. I think some people have an easier time with this stuff. Everything I've done has
Mhm.
been hard. I think that's why I'm good at coaching. Because when someone comes to me and they're like, this is silly, but I'm really struggling with, I'm like, honey, it's not silly. I struggled with that too. Like, I think that sometimes something being hard allows you to teach others to do it more easily. Because if it came easy to me, if I was just naturally confident and naturally, risk taking, I'd just be like, "Just do it. Come on. Just put yourself out there, girl. Like, do it." Versus for me, I'm like, "Oh, it's agony,"
Yeah.
and then I figure it out. And then I'm like, "Oh, I can help other people through this because I've been in the dark. I've been in the dark places too for
Yeah.
most of my life."
Yeah, you mentioned the dark night of your soul. Can you touch on that? I think some people might not know what that is, and I'm sure you're seeing that in a lot of the clients and the founders you're working with, going dark night of the soul.
So the term dark night of the soul comes from a very, very old book by a Spanish mystic. But the concept of the dark night of the soul is when a part of your ego realizes or is starting to realize that it no longer has a place in your identity. And so it feels like it's dying. Some people call it an ego death. It's not your whole ego dissolving away. Obviously, if we're in a human body, we have an ego. But a dark night of the soul is when you realize that a relationship. Like I've had clients go through dark nights of the soul along with a breakup or a divorce. I've had clients go through a dark night of the soul when they realize their business is going to have to shut down and they've put their whole identity on the business. Someone coming out of the closet and having to reveal to, people that they have a different identity than what they assumed. There's so much beauty on the other side of it, but in that moment you feel like you're dying because a part of you actually is, and so the more that we are identifying with the false self or the projection or who people think we are, a lot of people in the public eye end up having these dark nights of the soul because they have so many people counting on them. Like if
Mm,
you're a CEO, if you're an influencer and you have millions of people counting on you to be this version of you, and then you decide, that's not who I am anymore. I'm actually this person. The part of you that is going away, it holds on, it fights, and it dies a painful death. But then on the other side, there's like a dropping into self. You feel more clear, and there's a real sense of pride might be the wrong word, but there's this real embodied confidence that comes from saying, "This is going to be scary.
mm,
This is going to be hard, and I know it's right, and so I'm going to do it anyway." And if you can become the type of person who looks at the scariest choice and can say, I deserve to feel what it's going to feel like on the other side of this scary choice, you're unstoppable. I mean, that's alchemy, that's magic, that's power. Like real power is knowing that you can hold yourself steady
right,
through whatever life throws at you because you know what's on the other side. It's the rainbow, right? The storm and then the rainbow.
right. And I love that you're doing the somatic work. I think that for years, one of the first things that for me starting on my healing journey was talk therapy. And it was
Yeah.
talk therapy is great. Obviously, it helped me, when I was diagnosed and doing everything. But in these last few years, discovering breath work, turning that into my purpose as a coach, I think it's so important to get out of your head and into your body. And that's incredible that that's the work that you're geared towards. What is something that you wish you could tell Amanda? Like, what's one piece of life advice you wish you could give Amanda at 25 years old?
I mean, the number one thing that she needed to not only hear but feel is you are loved. You're not alone because so much of the bad choices or, reckless choices or overexertion, all the ways that we harm ourselves, it is always a misplaced search for love. it is always a misplaced search for belonging. And because of the way that I was brought up and just the challenges in my family, I didn't feel loved and I didn't feel like I belonged. And so I was willing to do whatever it took to create a version of a life that felt like people were stuck with me almost. Like I needed to be irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I needed to be so valuable to
Mhm.
every relationship that I was in that I was safe. I was
Yeah.
safe, right? And that meant overgiving, overdoing, overworking, overthinking, and then having to drink to dissociate, to,
Right.
recover. I think that I had so many answers inside of me and so much wisdom inside of me at 25, but it was not able to be expressed because there was such a strong layer of fear and self loathing. It almost like had me in a chokehold. And so, like, my 20s, my 30s, now I'm 42, right? It's been this big exhale
Yeah.
of I can exist without everything being a move towards safety. I can
Mhm.
find that safety within myself.
And that resonates with me so much right now because I've been stressing how more than anything in my life, in my relationships and with myself, emotional safety. That's been my
Yeah.
like number one this year. And you really realize like the word safe has that much power. So coming toward the end here of our hour, I wanted to ask if someone listening is feeling really successful on paper, but empty inside, what would you want them to know?
The first thing I'd want them to know and really take in is do not judge yourself for wherever you are because the choices that you made to get where you are at a certain point in your life, they made sense and they
Mhm.
were really valid, lovely choices. Any events or accomplishments or jobs or anything that's happened during that trajectory, even if you pivot wildly, you will one day look back and understand why creator, God, whoever you believe in, had you take those steps. Because Ram Dass, who's a very famous spiritual teacher, says everything is grist for the mill, right? Every experience you have in your life is a part of your curriculum. So once you realize, okay, my life looks good on paper, but it's no longer what I want to be doing. The other thing to remind yourself is this doesn't have to be an overnight thing. And actually, it's probably better if it's not. You don't have to blow up your life. You don't have to quit tomorrow. You have to start making incremental but intentional turns towards what really lights your heart on fire. And if you don't know that yet, start getting curious and getting curious and getting curious. The thing that I see most people do wrong is they shame themselves
Hmm.
and then they rush themselves.
Right.
Can't believe I'm still doing this. This is so out of alignment. I need to hurry up and go here. It's like, no.
Right.
What a blessing to have the realization that you're ready for a change. Be
Hmm.
grateful for that. Be proud of yourself for admitting that. How many people stay in a job, stay in a marriage, stay in a city, stay in an identity, are not willing to admit to themselves, hey, this isn't working anymore?
Right.
So, yeah, that's what I'd say. Let go of the shame and let go of the pressure to rush. And then maybe, find somebody to help you navigate the transition, depending on what that is.
You are an incredible teacher and healer and coach, and yeah, own it. Own all the work that you've done. Own the mentorship, the apprenticeship, because you've done it,
Yeah.
and it shows. Like sitting with you in the space and just talking, like your heart is open. It opens my heart. I can see
Mm,
you're meant to be doing what you're meant to be doing. So, what's
yeah.
one thing that you're actively working on today?
Yeah. The thing that I'm actively working on is my community becoming collective. And I'm really feeling into how can I be of service to not only the individuals, but bringing together individuals who need each other. We're in a moment in history where so much is turning upside down, where AI, where the economy, where the environment, there is so much chaos. And I want people to find community where they can be honest and vulnerable and express themselves and ask the big questions before they're in a crisis,
Yeah.
before they hit a rock bottom
Yeah.
moment. What I see is that a lot of people don't really seek help or seek community until they're like, "Oh my god, everything's falling apart. I'm at a rock bottom." But there can be so much wisdom and support that comes from just saying, you know what? I'm doing okay, but I need people. I want people. I
100%.
don't want to do this alone. I don't want this to be me and ChatGPT or me and the girl on TikTok that's reading my tarot card. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
find community. And so I'm really working on how can I make this community the best act of service
Mhm.
to humans that it can possibly be. Because I've been doing one-on-one work for so long, and I love my one-on-one clients, but I'm really working on how can I be a steward for the type of world that I want to create, and that starts by building community.
I think that it's so important. You really do need community to heal. What does that look like for you?
Well, our community meets every Monday night at 7 Eastern, and we do a rotating lineup. On the first Monday, I do a wisdom talk on a specific
Mhm.
topic. We're talking about the inner child this month and next month, which has been really both like fun and also very, deep and challenging. The second Monday, we do somatic movement. Then we do breath work the third Monday, and then we do coaching the fourth Monday, where people just rapid fire ask me questions. And that's been wonderful. There's always moments where I put people into triads. So you go into a little room with two other people and just really go into a deep question, like a prompt that's given, and really get to know people a little bit better. But I would love for there to be more hybrid options. I would love for there to be more offerings that are designed in service of what the community is asking for. So whether that's me going to different cities, whether that's me bringing people to my home. I love hosting people on my land. I have a beautiful property. The other thing that I will say is, and this is like me being so, it's like I want to coach as I'm telling you what I'm doing, which is I have two children,
Mhm.
have a coaching practice and a household to run and bills to pay. And so as I'm building my own business out, I'm being very thoughtful about the pacing. I'm not in a rush. I coach a lot of solopreneur women who feel like I need to launch the this, then I need to launch the this, the mastermind, and then I need to do 3 retreats this year, and then I need to do that. And it's like I can't put myself in a place of burnout. I can't put myself in a place of overwhelm. The reason why I can show up for my people, whether it's one on one or my community, with an open heart and with a clear channel is because I'm not overdoing it anymore. Like that is one mistake I know I will never make again because I
Yeah.
did it so big. And so, you might not see many new offerings from me in a 12-month period. And I'm okay with that
Yeah.
because, like what I said about the patience piece, if you know that this is where your soul is going,
Right.
you don't need a
There's no
rush.
rush. There's no
You don't
rush.
need to rush. And those words, even, I mean, for me, there is like no like better pillow talk than you don't need to rush. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, "Whoa, talk dirty to me. You don't need to rush, girl. Take your time.
And to close, and you
Yeah.
actually said rapid fire, and so I'm going to ask you some rapid
Okay.
fire questions. Number 1, coffee or tea?
Coffee. I'm Italian. Come on.
Mountains or beach?
Both.
Both. Okay, fair. What's a practice that you never skip?
Nature.
What's one book everyone should read?
Well, this is tough. I'm going to go with Eastern Body, Western Mind.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
by Anadea Judith, and it's about the interconnection of Western psychology and the chakra system. And I think for anybody who cares about energy, energetic anatomy, their
Mhm,
aura, their chakra system, just kind of how they're vibrating out in the world,
mhm.
it brings in really scientific research from Western clinical, studies. And that book changed my life. I recommend it to everyone because I want people to understand that like what people call woo is actually the realest. Like it is it's the most potent medicine you will ever receive. And it
Yeah.
is not in conflict with Western science most of the time.
So
Most of
most
the
of
time.
the time.
Yeah, but I highly recommend that book, and I think it's under recommended. I almost said Untethered Soul, but everybody recommends
That's
that
my
book, so
favorite.
right? But it's like
That's what I say. That literally.
I'm like, I wanted to be a little bit more niche,
No, no, that's
So
great. Thank you.
Eastern
I'm gonna.
body, Western mind.
Yes,
Yeah,
writing that down, and then finally just fill in the blank. Purpose is
truth.
very, very powerful. That's all my questions.
Yeah. Oh, I love that your card says Party Girl Interrupted. The branding, love
Yeah.
it.
So every episode ends with this.
Yeah.
I believe every version of ourselves has a purpose.
Mm.
I think it was Simon Sinek who had writ like, "Find your purpose, master it, share it with the world," which is clearly what
Yeah,
you're doing. Looking back at your journey from ambitious, first fun, joyful little girl, Amanda, to ambitious executive to the work that you're doing today. What do you think every version of Amanda was trying to teach the next one?
gosh. I think that if I'm to look back at little me,
Mhm.
she had so much faith in the human spirit. Kind of 20 something me was questioning, is that right? Is that true? Is that real? Or is it the material world that you're supposed to go after? Make money, make contacts, that's what matters. And now in this era, I'm looking back at little me and saying, you were right. And you were right too, girl. We can
Yeah.
have a little bit of both, right? But I look back so fondly at all the chapters of my life and all the learning. I sometimes joke with people like, you want a coach or a healer or a teacher who's been through some shit and surprises us. We're there
Mhm,
for you. We're there for you in the muck.
mhm.
You know, hard times either make you bitter or they make you wise. And I feel grateful to have the wisdom that I had, even though I had to learn it all the hard way. But I feel very grateful to be sitting here today with, the wisdom that I had from all those past experiences.
And I'm so grateful to have been introduced to you again by Lana in Miami, and just being seen by somebody else who went through the exact same thing. We could talk about partying,
Mhm.
we talk about having the career, having the identity shifts, the interruption, the imposter
Yeah.
syndrome, the burnout. Like, I see you, girl, and I feel
Uh-huh.
seen by you. And so I'm so grateful
I
we got to.
know. I was like, I'm so excited to have this conversation because it's not a lot of people can relate,
No.
you
Well,
know?
we were women in it. I said it in one of the first episodes. It's like we had an actual handbook. I don't know if Tao groups had we had an actual handbook, and it was like great. So I know like the logistics, all the things. It even said in there it was like make sure you work out, eat healthy. I'm like we have like a healthy handbook, but there was no handbook on how to navigate being a woman that young in that space. And so to meet someone else who went through it, is on the other side, went from party to purpose, it's an honor. I'm so grateful to
Yeah.
have you on here
Thank you
today.
for having me.
If anybody wants to check out, you and the great work that you're doing, where can we find you? What are your socials?
Yeah, my socials are just at Amanda Baudier or www.amandabaudier.com. That's Baudier. And then my community is Becoming Collective, which is becoming-collective.com. And I think we're becoming underscore collective underscore. The handles are harder to get these days,
Yeah,
but you'll find if you go to my page, you'll find Becoming Collective. And we're taking members all the time. And it's such a beautiful community of
yeah,
humans. So I hope you find me there.
I do love that. And you're working with women and men.
Yeah, I work with women and men. My coaching practice is like 70% women, 30% men. And I think it's good for men and women to do this stuff together. I'm a big believer in co ed spaces. I love having men and women healing together. I
Mm.
think that's a big part of what's been missing from a lot of the modern kind of psychological, spiritual dialogue. And yeah, we need our brothers to do this with us. Like we
Yeah.
can't do it alone.
Thank you again for being here. Thank you for being on Party Girl Interrupted.
Yay.
We'll catch each other next time I'm in New York. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Party Girl Interrupted. If something in this episode stayed with you, please share it with a friend or someone who might need it too. You can leave a review or subscribe so that you don't miss future conversations. I'm really glad that you're here. See you next week.